Slicing with Java. In this video, we will learn how to slice strings using string methods. During the Python unit, we learned how to slice strings using indexing. Slicing can also be done in Java, however, we can't do it with indexing because we cannot index strings in Java the way we index strings in Python. Thus, if we want to slice strings in Java, we will usually have to use one or more string method. In this video, we will discuss several of the most common string methods used for slicing strings, and we will also discuss how to loop over a string with the for loop. Each example we look at will operate on string str, which stores the character sequence hello world ! The first method we'll observe is the length method. The length method returns the number of characters in the string. Here we're invoking str.length, so we want to know the number of characters in str. That number is 12, thus 12 gets printed out to the screen. The next method is the char@. method. The char@x method, where x is an int parameter, returns the character located at index x and returns it as a char value. In this example, we're looking for the character at index 4. Okay? That character is lowercase o. Thus, lowercase o gets returned and printed to the screen. Another way we could have retrieved this character is through the substring method. The substring method, where x and y are int parameters, returns the character sequence starting at index x all the way up to but not including index y, and returns it as a string object. Here in this example, we're saying return the character sequence that starts at index 4 and goes all the way up to but does not include 5. This produces just one character, which once again is lowercase o. Thus, lowercase o gets printed out to the screen here. The key difference here is that instead of the lowercase o being returned as a char value, it got returned as a string object. Being aware of both ways to retrieve one character is important because in some applications, working with a char value will be convenient, and in other applications, working with a string object will be convenient. Now consider this line of code. Here, we're asking for the substring that begins at index 1 all the way up to but not including 9. That subsequence gets returned and thus output to the screen. Once again, notice that the character at index 9 was not included. The second parameter is always exclusive. Now consider this line of code. Here we're asking for all characters beginning at index 6 all the way up to but not including 12. In other words, we're going from index 6 all the way to the end. When your goal is to create a substring that extends all the way to the end of the string, there are several ways we can do that. The first of which you already see here. Here we typed 12 as the second parameter, which is simply the number that is one above the last index. The other way we could have done it was by using the length method as our second parameter. The reason this approach works is because the length method will always return a value one above the highest index in the string. Okay? That being said, if your goal is to extend all the way to the end of the string, then the most efficient approach is simply to type the starting index. When you call the substring method with just one number, the substring method will then assume that you're going from that one number all the way to the end of the string. So in this example, by simply typing the number 6, the substring will interpret that to mean go from index 6 all the way to the end of the string. That value gets returned and thus printed out to the screen. Now, it must be noted that we used the substring method 3 different times, and each time a string got returned, but str never changed. The content of str never changed. This is because string methods are immutable, meaning they cannot modify the original string. At most, they can return a new string object that we can use, but the method cannot modify the original string. This is why, even though we used the substring 3 times, at no point in time did the content of the str variable ever change. Now, the next method we'll look at is the index of method. The index of method where S is a character sequence or string, searches for S within the string. If found, it will return the starting index. If not found, it will return -1. So in our example, we're looking for the character sequence world with a capital W within str. It turns out that sequence does exist within str, and it begins at index 6. Thus, 6 gets returned and printed out to the screen. Now look at this example. Here, we're looking for the character sequence ELLO within str, where all characters are lowercase. Turns out, this character sequence exists within the string as well, and it starts at index 1. Thus, 1 gets returned and printed out to the screen. Now consider this example. Once again, we're searching for the character sequence ELLO, but with an uppercase E. As has been stated before, in computer science, lowercase letters and uppercase letters are not identical. So since there is no uppercase E inside str, there's no way this character sequence can exist within str. Thus, -1 gets returned and printed out. We'll close this video by demonstrating how to loop through a string using a for loop. Okay? The most common header when looping through a string is to simply initialize the loop variable to 0, have the loop continue for as long as it is less than the length of the string, and then increase the loop variable by 1 every single time. Okay? Then inside the for loop, we can pull out each character one at a time using the char@at method and using I as our index. We could also use the substring method. Okay? Very rarely, if ever, are you going to use both of these approaches, but in this example, we're demonstrating both just so that you know what each approach looks like. Then in the third line, we're going to print out both variables. Notice that when we call the char@at method, the value returned was stored inside a char variable, and when we call the substring method, the value returned was stored inside a string variable. In any case, the output for both variables when printed to the screen will be the same.